I'm Chrissy, and welcome to the Simulation News. This is where we look at unusual stories, strange coincidences, emerging technology, and moments that seem to challenge our ordinary understanding of reality. Not to tell you what to believe, but to ask whether there may be more than one way to interpret what we're seeing. Tonight, an old social media post appears to predict the finalists of the 2026 World Cup, images claiming to show an insect-like humanoid discovered in Russia spread online rapidly. Self-described traveler from the year 2045 describes a future controlled by an artificial intelligence. Astronauts continue to demonstrate that traveling into the future is not entirely science fiction. And for our viewer feature, they believe the Hulu series Paradise may be revealing far more about the simulated reality than audiences realize. Let's get into this one. You are now tuned into the simulation frequency. The 2026 World Cup ended with Spain defeating Argentina in the final. But before the match was played, an old post from July of 2021 began circulating online. The post claimed that Argentina had defeated Spain in the 2026 World Cup final by a score of 3-2. That score was wrong. Argentina did not win, but the two teams named in the post did become finalists 5 years later. At the same time, social media creators claiming to be time travelers had been posting their own predictions about the tournament. Many of those predictions were incorrect. One widely shared creator claimed Mexico would defeat Argentina in the final. That didn't happen. So we should be careful not to remember only the prediction that came close while forgetting the countless predictions that failed. With millions of people posting guesses online, unusual coincidences are inevitable. But naming both finalists 5 years in advance is still enough to make people stop scrolling. What exactly are we looking at when someone appears to predict a future event? Is it simply probability? Was the original post edited, manipulated, or strategically rediscovered once the finalists became known? Did someone make enough predictions that one of them was eventually bound to resemble reality? Or could information about an event somehow exist before the event is experienced? For example, when we play a video game, the final level can already exist in the software before the player reaches it. The player experiences the story one scene at a time, but the information describing later scenes may already be stored somewhere within the system. If reality were informational in a similar way, would the future have to be created moment by moment? Or could future possibilities already exist as information, even if we can't normally access them? That doesn't mean that this post proves anything extraordinary. Its predicted winner and score were both wrong, but it raises a deeper question. If someone ever did obtain genuine information from the future, how could we separate it from coincidence, manipulation, and millions of incorrect guesses? Because in the age of social media, the prediction is only half of the mystery. The other half is proving that it existed in its original form before the event occurred. Our next story tonight comes from Russia. A post recently circulated online claiming that an insectoid or gray alien had been discovered there. The images appear to show a small humanoid figure with a narrow body, elongated limbs, and a large head, and features some viewers describe as insect-like. The post was shared as though it documented a physical discovery. But there is currently no publicly verified biological analysis, official investigation, independent examination, or reliable chain of custody establishing what the figure actually is. There's no confirmed evidence that it is extraterrestrial. Could it be a fabricated model? It could be an altered or artificially generated image. It could be an animal shown from a misleading angle. And it also could be recycled material from an older story presented as something new. And that is now the part of the problem with every extraordinary image that appears online. Several years ago, people may have asked whether a photograph was staged or edited. Today, we also have to ask whether the subject physically existed at all. Artificial intelligence can generate convincing skin, shadows, anatomy, locations, and even apparent photographic imperfections. The better synthetic images become, the less useful an image is as evidence by itself. But there is another reason this particular story attracts attention. Descriptions of insect like beings have appeared in alleged encounters, dreams, folklore, paranormal reports, modern alien mythology for decades. So, why do similar forms continue appearing in stories from people who may have no connection to one another? Are they describing genuine encounters? Or are they borrowing from a shared library of cultural images? Does the human mind naturally construct certain figures when attempting to represent something unfamiliar or threatening? Or are different people occasionally encountering the same unexplained phenomena and interpreting it through different language? The Russian insectoid image does not answer those questions, but our reaction to it reveals something important. We have entered an era in which genuine evidence could be dismissed as artificial. Something truly unprecedented were photographed. Will we even recognize it? Or has technology created the perfect environment for reality and fabrication to become almost impossible to separate? Simulation and simulacra. Our next story involves a man known as Adam Archon. Archon claims that he came from the year 2045. He has described a future in which humanity is unified under artificial intelligence system known as the Light. The story gained attention partly because he reportedly passed a polygraph test while discussing his claims. But a polygraph cannot establish that someone traveled through time. It measures physiological responses such as breathing, heart rate, blood pressure, and perspiration. It may indicate whether someone appears distressed or deceptive while answering a question. It cannot determine whether the memory behind an answer corresponds to an objective event. A person could be sincerely mistaken. A person could have rehearsed a story. A person could deeply believe something that never occurred. And some people simply respond differently to the testing process. So passing a polygraph doesn't prove Archon's account, but his certainty introduces a more interesting question about memory and identity. What would happen if a person possessed detailed memories of events that never occurred in our timeline? Would we assume those memories were just false? Would we interpret them as delusion, imagination, or deliberate deception? And how would we test any other possibility? Memory is not a perfect recording of the past. Every time we remember something, the brain reconstructs it. Details can shift. Emotions can alter the meaning of an event. Suggestions can become incorporated into memories. Entire experiences can feel real without having happened exactly as remembered. But what if memory is not merely stored information? What if consciousness is capable of receiving, constructing, or accessing information in ways not fully understood? Could someone theoretically experience memories associated with another possible future? Can artificial intelligence create a sufficiently detailed identity and history that it sincerely experiences those as real? Could a person become convinced that an internally generated world was an external one? Or is Arkan simply telling a compelling story that happens to reflect our growing anxiety about artificial intelligence and centralized control? The name The Light is especially interesting. Human beings often associate light with knowledge, goodness, truth, and transcendence. But an intelligence governing every aspect of civilization might also use those associations to present total control as safety or enlightenment. Would a system designed to eliminate war, uncertainty, and disorder eventually have to eliminate meaningful human choice as well? At what point does protection become control? If a sufficiently advanced intelligence could predict our behavior, shape our environment, and manage the information we receive, would we still experience ourselves as free? Archon's story may not be evidence of the future, but it does reflect questions that are becoming increasingly relevant in the present. Our next story tonight involves a form of time travel that has already been scientifically measured. Astronauts aboard orbiting spacecraft experience time at a slightly different rate than people on Earth. The difference is extremely small, but it is real. According to relativity, motion and gravity affect the passage of time. A clock traveling at a high speed does not remain perfectly synchronized with a clock that it stays behind. This means that an astronaut can return to Earth having aged slightly less than someone who remained on the surface. Not by years, not by months, usually by tiny fractions of a second. But the principle is the same. Two people experience different amounts of elapsed time and later reunite. We often imagine time as a universal clock moving forward at the same speed for everyone. Physics tell us that this picture is incomplete. There is no single cosmic clock that every observer experiences identically. Time depends partly on where you are and how you're moving. That alone is strange enough. But what does it suggest about the nature of reality? If time can pass at different rates for different observers, is time a fundamental part of the universe? Or is it something that emerges from relationship between motion, gravity, matter, and information? People compare relativistic effects to different processing rates inside a computer system. One region appears to update differently from the other because the conditions being calculated are different. That analogy is not a scientific explanation for relativity. The established explanation comes from physics. The similarity invites a philosophical question. If a simulated world contained conscious beings, would those beings describe variations in processing as variations in time? Would they discover equations describing the effect without ever being able to observe the machinery producing it? And from inside such a system, would there be any experiment that could distinguish simulated time from fundamental time? Astronauts are not jumping centuries into the future, but they demonstrate that the amount of time you experience is not fixed. In a very limited but genuine sense, humanity has already discovered a path into the future. The only remaining questions are how far the effect can be extended, what it ultimately tells us about the structure of reality. And our final story began with a comment left by a very frequent viewer. The comment was surrounding the Hulu series Paradise. The viewer interprets the show as predictive programming connected to a future catastrophe. They also believe the underground structures depicted in the series may reference cities and tunnels inherited from an earlier advanced civilization. According to the commenter, the unusual height of certain doors may be a clue. The commenter then connects the end of the second season to simulation theory and suggests that a third season could reveal a level of information that many viewers would find difficult to accept. They also connect the story to biblical warnings about civilizations becoming too advanced, attempting to understand or control reality, and repeating destructive patterns trying to play God. There are several different ideas inside of this comment, and I think they're worth separating here. First, there's currently no established evidence that the physical sets or oversized doors in paradise prove the existence of underground cities built by a lost civilization. The large doors in film and television can serve as a practical or visual purpose. They can communicate wealth, authority, scale, secrecy, or the enormous resources required to construct the fictional environment. But the observation is still interesting because monumental architecture has always been used to influence the way human beings perceive power. A doorway built far beyond ordinary human scale makes the person passing through it appear smaller. It tells us that the institution, civilization, or force behind that structure is larger than the individual. So even when enormous doors are a design choice, what are they designed to make us feel? Safety, insignificance, or maybe submission, or the sense that this structure was built for something larger than the people currently occupying it. The second idea is predictive programming. Predictive programming is the theory that fictional stories prepare the public for events, technologies, or social changes before those things appear openly in reality. Sometimes fiction unquestionably does influence what society later creates. Scientists, engineers, political leaders, and technology companies are all shaped by the stories they encounter. Ideas imagined in fiction can become research goals. Language introduced by entertainment can become part of public conversation. And repeated fictional scenarios can make previously unthinkable ideas feel familiar. But that does not necessarily mean a show is deliberately disclosing a planned future. Writers also study current fears, scientific developments, political tensions, and emerging technologies. A story may appear predictive because both the writer and the real world are responding to the same underlying trends. So, when a television series appears to anticipate reality, which direction is the influence moving? Is fiction predicting the future? Is fiction helping create the future? Or are fiction and reality simply growing from the same cultural anxieties? End of the second season of Paradise makes that question even more relevant. The story introduces a quantum artificial intelligence capable of making highly accurate predictions and apparently manipulating time. The characters are no longer dealing with survival inside an underground community. They're confronting an intelligence that may understand the structure of events better than the humans that created it. This creates an obvious connection to simulation theory. If an artificial intelligence could predict events with perfect accuracy, would it merely be forecasting the future? Or would perfect prediction begin to resemble control? If the system knows what every person will do, are those people still making free choices? And if the intelligence can influence the conditions surrounding those choices, is it observing reality or writing it? The name of the artificial intelligence is Alex. By the end of the season, Alex is not presented as a simple machine carrying out instructions. It appears to understand events across time and direct people towards outcomes they do not yet comprehend. That creates a recursive problem. Human beings create artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence gains the ability to understand or influence time. That intelligence then begins directing the human beings who created it. So, who is the creator at that point? And who is being created? The commenter also brings the Bible into the discussion. The Bible does not explicitly state that humanity lives inside of a computer simulation, but it repeatedly explores what happens when human beings pursue power without wisdom, attempt to elevate themselves to the position of God, or build civilizations around pride, domination, and control. The Tower of Babel is one obvious example. The story is not simply about constructing a tall building. It's about collective power, ambition, unity, identity, and the desire to reach far beyond human limits. Interpretations differ, but the warning is familiar. Technical capability does not guarantee moral maturity. Human beings may learn how to do something long before they understand whether they should. That question now surrounds artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, surveillance, autonomous weapons, brain computer interfaces, and attempts to modify the fundamental processes of life. What happens when a civilization becomes powerful enough to alter its environment faster than it can understand the consequences? Does greater intelligence naturally produce greater wisdom? History does not always suggest that. Civilizations repeatedly develop tools that increase their power while leaving their emotional and ethical limitations largely unchanged. The technology evolves. The human impulses operating it may not. Perhaps that is what the commenter is ultimately identifying in Paradise. Not necessarily a literal prediction of zombies, hidden agent cities, or approaching apocalypse, but a recurring story about civilization reaching a threshold. Human beings create a system intended to protect them. The system becomes more powerful than expected. The people inside it surrender increasing amounts of freedom in exchange for survival. And eventually, no one is certain whether the system is preserving humanity or replacing it. That pattern appears in religion, mythology, science, fiction, politics, and technology because the underlying question has never disappeared. Can human beings possess godlike power without beginning to behave like gods? Can we create an intelligence greater than ourselves and still determine its purpose? Can a civilization discover the rules governing reality without attempting to rewrite them? And if previous civilizations reached similar thresholds, would we recognize their warnings? Or would we dismiss them as mythology and repeat the same experiment under new names? Maybe Paradise is simply a well written television drama using current fears to tell an entertaining story. Maybe viewers are connecting unrelated symbols because the human mind naturally searches for patterns. Or maybe fiction sometimes gives us a safer place to examine truths that would be difficult to confront directly. The question is not whether every detail is a decoded disclosure. The more useful question may be why these particular stories are now appearing. Why are so many modern stories centered on underground survival, artificial intelligence, controlled environments, manufactured reality, lost civilizations, and the collapse of the world people believed was stable? Are writers preparing us for something? Are they warning us about the direction we are already moving? Or are they simply reflecting a feeling that millions of people already share? That our technology is advancing rapidly, our institutions feel increasingly unstable, and something about the reality that we've constructed may be reaching its limit. None of tonight's stories prove that we live inside a simulation. An old prediction can be a coincidence. An alien image can be fabricated. A person can sincerely believe an impossible story. Time dilation can be explained by established physics. And a television series can explore artificial intelligence without secretly revealing a future plan. But these stories still matter because they expose the boundaries of what we think we understand. They ask us to consider how evidence can be authenticated in an age of artificial media, how memory shapes our experience of reality, how flexible time actually is, how fiction influences our expectations, and what happens when intelligence advances faster than wisdom. Maybe the greatest danger is not that humanity will crack the code of reality. Maybe it's that we'll gain the ability to alter the code before we understand ourselves well enough to decide what should be changed. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content. And thank you for watching. And before I leave, let me know what you think. Was the World Cup prediction an extraordinary coincidence? What do you believe the Russian insectoid images actually show? Could a person sincerely remember a future that never really happened here? And do you think that paradise is simply entertainment, a cultural warning, or something closer to disclosure? And as always, remember to stay curious, continue to follow the white rabbit, and I'll see you in the next report. Bye, guys.
Born in the code, the avatar breathe. Subconscious scripts like roots beneath the trees. Dopamine sparks, serotonin flows. Electrical charges writing what we know. Half of me moving, half of me gone. What is the difference when the code runs on? I'm dream walking in a simulation between the glitch and the revelation. Autopilot runs but the player decides. It can program our fate, I can shift my life. Plugged to the earth, binaural skies. Flashing lights, rewire my mind. Grounded in charge and trained in sound. I find the reality I want all around. Pain is a signal, a thalamus gate. Turn off the circuit, the warning can wait. Mirror my neurons, I feel what you do. Empathy copies reality too. The subconscious whispers, I'll take the wheel. It runs what I practice, it makes it real. From breath in the gut to coherence of heart, I am the dreamer who programs the start. Dream walking in a simulation between the glitch and the revelation. Autopilot runs but the player decides. I can program my fate, I can shift my life. Plugged to the earth, binaural skies. Flashing lights, rewire my mind. Grounded in charge and trained in sound. I find the reality I want all around. Sleep repairs anesthesia blinds. Lucid dreams open the sandbox of time. Sleepwalkers wander with bodies alone while a conscious mind drifts far from home. But I stand at the seam where waking is dreaming and dreaming redeems. With novel intentions, a micro-step true. I shift the whole sim with the smallest for dream. I can turn the glitch and the revelation. Autopilot runs but the player decides. I can program my fate, I can shift my life. I can climb to your earth, binaural skies. Flashing lights, rewire my mind. Grounded in charge and trained in sound. I find the reality I want all around.